nature, right? We all project our own perspective onto nature. It's like every single day I hear a new thing of what nature is, right? Well, nature is this, nature is that. Everybody's using nature to support their own biased perspective on life. And so it's just interesting to me that we don't see that. We don't see how we're all just doing the same thing, right? We're all just looking out into the world, and specifically in this space, more nature-oriented people, they reference nature a lot to kind of support what they believe in, because a lot of us see nature as the blueprint. We see nature as the OG. We see nature as the original. And so we think that there's wisdom and value in nature. And so it makes sense, it makes sense that we're trying to make sense of nature and interpret it in such a way. I just think that we have to be aware that what we're placing onto nature, or the characteristics that we're projecting onto nature, come from us, a lot of times, because we see what we want to see, and it's just kind of like there's an inherent bias to how we observe reality. And so I don't know if we can escape that, because nature to me is just what is. Nature is just is. And so because we have this mind that wants to make sense of the world and wants to interpret and find meaning, we're like always battling with just being. Like, it's hard to just be. It's hard to just sit here. Even you see it in conversation, right? You're having a conversation with somebody, or even in the live right now. Maybe I feel a little bit compelled to just fill in the space. I have to do something. I have to figure it out. I have to say something. I have to say the right thing. I have to be the right person. I have to put myself out there in a certain way. And you kind of get more and more away from just being. Just like being at peace with just being. So I think that in a way, that's what nature represents for us, because nature is not going to be boxed in, and it's on its own accord. It's moving at its own speed, and it's within its own cycles, within its own sovereignty. And so we want to impose or project onto it, but it's impossible, because you would never be able to box in nature. That's why you see so many different interpretations of nature, because nature encompasses everything, and so you have people, and I think what has sparked this, I had seen a video where some women were saying in a video, like, nature is queer. And I just thought about that, like, why we have a need to have to label nature as something, and I get it, we do observe behavior that, same sex, nothing, like, I don't see anything wrong with that. But it's just like we have to put this title on it. We do that to ourselves, obviously, too. We join groups or become part of movements where we self-identify as certain things. And, I get that human need to be part of something, but then we kind of impose that onto everything else around us to try to almost like we're trying to make something a part of what we got going on. We're trying to make nature our ally, because if nature has our support, then therefore our perspective is true or right. But everybody's doing that, not just you. Yeah, you have your own point of view of life, and yeah, you want to be accepted, and yeah, you want your truth or your perspective on life to be the right one. But so does everybody else, Everybody wants to believe that how they see life or how they see the world is the proper way to see the world. But what if we could just be okay with the possibility that everybody has a different perspective, and that's actually what makes life more enriching, is that we do have our differences. Because once we kind of go down the road of sameness, it's like homogenization of the human experience, the human culture. What if the beauty is in the differences that we experience, and that maybe we're going towards a space where we have an inability to tolerate a difference of opinion, yet we're interpreting that as disrespect, or we're interpreting that as hate. But it's really just people see the world differently, and that's okay. Like, not everybody has to see the world how you see it, because nature is diverse in that way too. Yes, you have some animals that do certain things, but then you have other animals that don't do that. So why are you focusing on the specific animals that support your bias? So it's like, that was my point with that video. And especially when it comes to like nutrition, right? I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with just the health space. Obviously you've probably heard the memes talking about like how certain animals eat only plants and they have muscles, or they've been able to build big bodies off of just plants. And so then they use that as a sort of marketing for that particular way of eating, specifically with the gorilla, right? Or like, you want to be as big as a gorilla, or look, gorillas are strong. These ruminant animals are strong and they eat nothing but plants. So it's like, you're going out into the world looking for something that can confirm your own perspective, but guess what? Other people are doing that too with other perspectives. So it's like, we're all doing the same thing. So it's just funny to me that we battle one another when we're all just projecting onto nature or our own perspective. And somebody has said, this only applies to people coming from first world nations, but not to indigenous people or people living with nature. And I don't think that's true. I think that it's the human condition. And I think it's important to value the perspective and the approach and the contribution that indigenous traditional cultures have had. I think it's a mistake, though, to position them out or above like the rest of the world in some like beyond human way, like, because at the end of the day, the same kind of issues exist throughout all of humanity, so I think that this is also another thing, and this is what culture comes from. All these different cultures and ways of looking at the world. Indigenous people all throughout the world have their own unique interpretations of it, and I think that's beautiful. I think that that's beautiful. Yes, there's similarities and commonalities between a lot of them, but I think the human condition is such that we give meaning to life, that we see out into the world and we interpret it a certain way, that we give meaning to nature and we interpret it a certain way, and I think that that's beautiful. I think that that's what we're supposed to be doing, and that, because that's obviously what we're doing. I just think that we should be aware of that, because then that allows us to understand other people. Like, that person's just trying to understand life, and they just happen to interpret it differently than I did. They're not wrong for it. I might not agree with it. That might not be my perspective, but I'm trying to do the same thing. So why would I stop somebody else from pursuing meaning in their life and understanding in their life when I'm on that same journey, So that's the beauty of nature, that is just like sitting there staring at you. Like, look at this palm. It's just being, right? And I think it's like that discomfort that we get, like when somebody, like, have you ever talked to somebody and they just stand there and look at you, and then you're like you kind of get nervous, like, what's going on, like, everything okay? It's like, yeah, just have my attention. So it's like when people act as just nothing, when they don't do anything, or they appear not to be interacting with you, like, there's this social pressure that you feel like, oh, what's going on, like, is something wrong? And then that's when you kind of start projecting, like, we're almost uncomfortable with just seeing ourselves, because that allows you to hear yourself. And then you're like, man, am I talking too much? Like, you're not talking at all. Like, is something wrong? So I feel like that's the same thing we do in nature. Like, if you go in nature, you get to see yourself, and then that can potentially be a gateway to your own understanding about yourself. That's why people go into nature to retreat, because you're trying to distinguish who you are against everything else in reality, in existence. And there's this dichotomy, right? Because we are different than everything in existence, but we're also intertwined with everything in existence. So you have to be able to identify this role that you're playing, but also see how you are intertwined with all of existence. Because then, if you only identify with yourself and you only know yourself, but you don't see how you connect with everybody else, then you won't be able to integrate that human part of you that is social, that is community based, and that is ultimately a big part of who we are. So I think they're both important, and I think there's a time and place for both of those things. I think that early on in my journey, I began with isolation, and I was going into the mountains and fasting and trying to uncover or remember who I was truly, aside from the programming of civilization, the programming of culture, the programming of people around me, and trying to discern the essence of who I was at a fundamental level. And then my next step on that journey was, how do I interface with other people now that I know who I am, now that I have a better sense or better grasp on my energy and how I show up in the world, So those are two different things, and a lot of people are comfortable with one, but they might not be comfortable with the other. But I think they're both very valuable. And so if you can be conscious about knowing when you're in one situation or when you're in one phase of your life that requires one over the other, maybe it is time for you to isolate. Maybe you do need to separate yourself from the noise and the distractions that are not allowing you to tune into who you are. And nature is a beautiful place for that. Nature is a place where that saturation of just noise can dissipate, and you can find some sort of relief in it, And then I think it's also important to recognize, okay, now it's time to reintegrate and connect with people and form bonds and relationships and go through the chaos that brings too, because there's growth in that as well. So nature is the ultimate mirror for you to see yourself, because it's neutral. It's neutral about it. It don't care about your beliefs. It don't care about how you think things should be. It doesn't care about your ideals. It's just a neutral place. It's a neutral thing that's gonna leave you with nothing but yourself. So yeah, that's my own 2 cents. But like I said, I could just be projecting that onto nature too. I'm just doing the same thing. So at the end of the day, you decide for yourself if what I'm saying resonates, because I'm doing the same thing as well. Like, it would be hypocritical for me to say nature is a mirror and we just project it onto it, and not to also add that I'm doing that too in the same token, But yeah, I think that's nature. Cities are like ticks sucking blood off of our beautiful planet. Yeah. That's one way to look at it. Yeah, I have videos about this. I've made analogies to cities being tumors and this infestation of this mindset that's kind of disconnected from the natural world. Yeah, and at the same token, sometimes I also have a sense of perspective and compassion for what humans have done to themselves, what we've done to ourselves through this process. Because I don't think, like, the way I look at it, I don't believe that there was this strategic plan to get here. I really wholeheartedly believe that where we at now as humanity is a byproduct of things of good intention, for the most part. I think that we wanted to experience a life outside of the uncertainty of nature and the cycles that nature exhibits and the cycles that nature has, And so we have tried to control the circumstances. So if you think about a city and civilization in general is a controlled environment. So nature is its own environment, its own system. So when you're in nature, you go into and fit into what's already happening, and you're a part of that, because you can't control nature to that degree. But what cities are, they override or have exhibited control over what was once nature and created a controlled environment, right? So you are controlling a lot of the parameters and factors that in nature are, that we're actually subject to in nature. Now we have control of the food supply. We have control of where food is accessed, where water runs. We create dams to divert natural water sources so that we can control the water supply in a way that we want to manage. So everything is becoming controlled. And this is what I noticed just in my studies of observing and trying to understand, how did we get here? How the hell did we get to me holding this phone and me talking through this device as a modern human who was born disconnected from interfacing with the natural world, right? With the trees, the grass, the birds, the fruit, the roots, with all of it. And it all started with the food supply, but really it's been this experiment to try to control and create a controlled situation. And so the more you kind of go down the route, you kind of get certain things. So some of the things that pop up as a result of controlling the environment is that you get religion, you get slavery, you get restriction of certain foods. Like, you start to get this kind of narrowed view of life that's based on the controlled environment, because now you're disconnected from nature and the influence that nature has always bestowed on us. So then that controlled environment becomes our philosophy, becomes our God, becomes the way we look at the world, and we see eyes through that domesticated mindset, like someone said. So now we're domesticated beings who are under the system of civilization and no longer under the system of nature. We're no longer interfacing with nature. Now we're interfacing with civilization. So now it's like life is about getting a job. It's about career. It's about the law. You have to follow the law or you might end up incarcerated. You have to deal with law enforcement, those that enforce the law of the civilization. So that's kind of where you operate from. The body is supposed to be clothed. You're supposed to have clothes on the body because socially that's expected of you, and the body itself is sexual in its nature, even when there is no sexual intention. So now we have to cover up and hide. Like, there's all these things that come along with the emergence of civilization. But like I was saying, I don't think it came about as a plot, right? Because I think this has happened over thousands and thousands of years. I don't think somebody sat down and said, we are going to domesticate humans and this is what we need to do. I don't even think that's possible because of how long it takes and the process required to even get here. I just think it's something that happened. We wanted to control our environment because we didn't like the uncertainty of nature. We didn't like some of the things that nature included. So we tried to insulate ourselves from the natural world and create a controlled environment where we could control the food. We could have year-round food of the same food supply. We could be insulated from the weather so we can experience a similar temperature year-round. All these things, right? But what we didn't account for or realize was that there was going to be repercussions to those actions. And I think that's what we're experiencing now, right? People are depressed. People have no purpose, no meaning in life. They're unhealthy. They don't even know how to relate or connect to the land. They're just lost. They're just feeling a sense of unfulfillment. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of mental illness. That's the repercussions of controlling and insulating yourself from nature. And I think that we're starting to learn that. Now everybody's seeing the benefits of nature, right? You see studies online, people talking about why it's good to take a walk in nature. Like, no shit. Like, really, like, it took us thousands of years of innovation and technology to realize that how indigenous and traditional cultures have been living since the beginning is healthy and beneficial. Like, so it's just so funny to me because and what that represents is that we don't accept reality for what it is. We don't accept nature for what it is. We only want to take the good things, and that's the mindset. That's the colonization. That's the domesticated mindset. I only want the good things that you have to offer, and I don't want to deal with the challenges that also come along with being in relationship to you. And that's relationships right there. That's the number one reason why people break up, because they only want to be in the loving state. They want to be completely immersed in the infatuation, but they don't want any of the hardship that comes with relationships, that comes with relating to one another, because there's differences. Now we have to try to understand, we have to communicate, we have to relate on a deeper level beyond just what you get benefit from. That's the mindset right there. So all these things are linked. If you only are looking for what brings you joy and fulfillment and ecstasy, but you're not accepting the other side of that, you will eventually end up here. You will end up as a domesticated, insulated, single, detached, individualistic human who's only thinking about themselves, because in order to be in relationship to anything outside of yourself, anybody outside of yourself, a natural environment, you must be willing to accept and relate to all parts of the other, all parts of nature. And if you're not willing to do that, you will create an environment that insulates you from nature and attempt to only get the benefit from it. This is why I said people know the fruit, but they don't know the tree that it came from. How many of you love a mango, but you will be hard pressed to identify a mango tree? How many of us love a pineapple, but we've never seen it grow? How many of us, love all these different fruits, but we don't know where they come from, how they grow, or how they even exist in nature? And so that's an analogy for that same thing I'm talking about, that we only want the benefit. We don't want the real. We don't want the true relationship, which is challenging at times. It requires more out of you. You have to be willing to offer something up. You can't just take. And people don't like that kind of relationship. So that's why humanity has ended up where we ended up. So yeah, that was a very good realization, even for myself. Yeah. We like life, but we don't like death. We like the infatuation, but we don't like the arguments. We like the nature, the fruit that nature provides, but we don't like the thorns. We don't like that we have to get through to pick the fruit. It's like on so many levels we like so many things, but we have to be willing to deal with the uncomfortable part of it too, because then we're not accepting it fully. Like, I can take you any day that you're feeling great and things are beautiful, but can I take you, and am I willing to relate to you when shit gets hard? Am I willing to go through that storm, because that's a part of who you are as well? So are you willing to step outside into nature and embrace everything that you see? Or are you only looking for things that make you feel good about nature? And this is what I noticed that we do, going back to the conversation of nature being a mirror. It's like, how many people have you heard reference that some animals eat the young because they know that there's limited resources, and maybe they have a litter of young that they know that they can't provide for it? But you're not going to hear people talk about that, because they only want to make nature seem like this beautiful paradise. And that is a part of it, right? There is a part of it, but there's also the part of it that's not that, is the contrast. And it's like, it's just selective. We're being very selective about what we see in nature, and so maybe if we just accepted that nature encompasses more than we're comfortable with accepting at the moment, that could be a start. We could start there, right? We could start by just saying that, like, yeah, there's some things in nature I don't know how to make sense of them. I don't know how to integrate that, or why that's happening. I don't feel comfortable with it. Okay, that's honest. That's honest. And if we start there, then maybe we can kind of open up the conversation to something more expansive, something a little bit deeper, and maybe going towards why do I not feel comfortable with it? And then maybe we'll end up kind of at this place where we kind of just discovered a moment ago that the mindset that we've cultivated as humanity, as a recent in our evolution, in our existence, has been geared a lot more towards only accepting and welcoming things that make us feel good, and rejecting or insulating ourselves from the things that bring challenge, from the things that bring contrast. And so now that we know that, now we can be aware of that and maybe be a little bit open and receptive to other parts, even when they make us feel uncomfortable. But now that we understand, because of the mindset that we were born into and what's been cultivated in us, maybe we can grow from that and start to just even understand, like, that things are beyond our ability to box it in. I mean, I know we would love nature to just be simple and life just to be simple, but it's complex. There's a lot of things, and I think that's fun to me. Like, I like that because it leaves you on this journey of just always being surprised by something new. You know, it's like discovering a new species that does this new thing that we didn't think was possible, right? Like, it's just like, oh shit, now we got to rewrite the books. Now we got to rewrite the biology. Now we got to rewrite the physics, because I think that's just reality, you know? And I think, well, nature is reality. Nature is everything, but reality is just such that it is an illusion. Like, the more you try to grasp it and hold on to it, the more it moves and shifts. Like, you can't hold it because it's not meant for you to hold. It's meant for you to experience. It's meant for you to come through you. It's meant for it to be felt, you know. But what we're trying to do is box it in and put it in a museum and show it to the world, when maybe that's not what we're supposed to be doing. Maybe that's not the purpose of all of this. But I digress. What's everybody saying? Nature is a self-replicating, self-regulating technological framework behind what we call the living world. It has patterns and encoding that is not perceptible to the end user most of the time. Yeah, I like that articulation. Our egos must die in order to experience oneness. And if our egos die, do we die? If the ego doesn't exist, which is a sense of self, then do we exist? If we're all experiencing oneness, how do we have an identity outside of the all? How do we identify? How can we even acknowledge or be aware of existence without an ego, or without some sense of self? It's a good question. Empathy, compassion, love. We are all pulsating ripples of reality in and out of this existence. True sacrifice comes in darkness, somebody's darkness. Teresa said, please save this life. Yeah, I'll save it. Limitless being soul. You want to come on? Did you send a request? I'm sorry, I'm just going back through the comments. Nature, the beautiful horror, its infinite expressions. If we ourselves become the middleman, we are at the wheel of nature. Nature is the most gruesome. Yeah, nature is everything. Nature is beautiful. Nature is gentle, serene, calm. Nature is chaotic and destructive. Nature is birthing and killing at the same time. Nature is infinite at the same time. Like it's just everything. It's like it's kind of a mind fuck, to be honest. And I think that that's why it's hard for people to contain these ideas, because it requires, it kind of messes with the mind to just even understand how that could be. But maybe we're not meant to understand, like we said. Experience. We are the tip of the blade called nature. How's it, brother?
Greetings.
I'm doing
It's good, man.
well.
How are you?
What's alive in you?
Yes. Man, the heart's active, the life force energy, everything, man. I'm really picking up on the message you're spreading right now about nature just being a reflection. And it's all up to us to perceive the true meaning, but not self-impose that onto others, because we've all been gifted this consciousness and this intelligence to perceive it a unique way. And we can all learn from one another, no matter what label, what skin color,
Yeah.
you know, what we eat, what we consume, because it's all energetic. It's just on another vibration from my perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Like, I think, sometimes I get triggered because people say, like, they use like my truth, and like I don't really resonate with saying my truth, but I get what they're saying, because I think when people say my truth, they're saying my perspective. Like, so to a certain extent, we are all living out and experiencing life through our perspective. So because then people will say, well, there's only one truth, and this is funny. Like, I agree, they're both true. I think there's only one truth that we all experience differently through our own perspective. You know what I mean? So it's like there's this
Absolutely.
and that's the polarity of life. That's the tangible with the ungraspable. That's the logic with the illogical. The chaos and the peace. And so, yeah, there is one truth.
The two sides
Right,
of our
right.
brain
So it's like there
hemispheres.
is one truth. We're all just experiencing that truth differently, and so then we call that my truth. So, you know,
There's our own relative truths, but then I also say there's absolute truths. Like, we're all birthed from our mother. We're all, the sun gives us energy. You don't have to debate
there's people
about
that will
that.
debate you on
It's like,
that. Yeah, no, yeah, yeah.
that is true. That is
And I
true.
think the more we kind of go down this train of thought, I think that's where we're seeing now things that we never had questions about, right? Like, one example would be like the whole gender identity. If you would have said like 20 years ago, like most people that idea to most people would have seemed crazy, would have seemed like so out of pocket that they wouldn't even consider having a conversation about it. But now we're getting to a point where people have
Mm.
shared a perspective and popularized a perspective where, oh shit, like we're questioning that now too. And it's like, damn, so even what you're saying, like this idea of absolute truth is getting to a point where even the things that we believe to be absolute are starting to be questioned in a way that we never thought before. So even this idea, do we get the energy from the sun? I'm guarantee you within the next couple of years, you're going to see somebody postulating some sort of theory about why that's not the case. You know,
All the
yeah,
sunscreen companies and all
yeah. I
that
mean, even
junk,
if we
for
talk about
sure.
like the quantum realm and quantum physics and all this, like things that we thought were very
Okay.
fixed, like the nature of solid objects, very recently in human history has been come into question. So I just think about that. and how we're kind of heading down this path to where and I think that's scary. I think it's challenging for a lot of people to hold, especially people who have a lot. They come from that very logical mind, like myself, like who we're very comfortable with solid truth. That's why we say like, well, some things are absolute because there's comfort in that. There's comfort in a solid structure of reality. Right,
We can
right. Like
ground
I feel
ourselves in
comfortable
it.
if I know that every day when I wake up, the sun's gonna rise, and I feel comfortable if there's not gravity isn't just suddenly gonna go out on me one day. Like
Everyone wants
yeah,
to
yeah.
make
So
sense of
there's
something.
comfort, I think, in stability and structure, and then there's also, and I love, I think Jordan Peterson had kind of positioned it this way, where he said there's a need for conservatives because they kind of show you um, things that have worked before. Like maybe we should keep doing this because it's kind of worked for a long time. But then there's also a purpose behind people who are more progressive because every now and again the right thing to do is to do something new or different. And I really resonate with that because that's kind of how I see life. I'm not, that's my whole mantra, stay balanced. It's not like I'm just conservative and
Yeah.
I want to just keep doing everything we've done because maybe there's going to come a time where we need to do something different. But at the same time, I value things that we've always done because there's a reason why we've always done them, right? So like maybe right, right,
If it ain't
right.
broke,
So
don't
so like I see
fix it.
both sides, and I think that if we can bring more light to this middle path and just be aware that a lot of people think like that, but what we see on social media and what is popular and it gets a lot of traction is the polarization and the extremes, right? So
Mm.
that's what was really gets a lot of press and attention is the polar extremes and opposites. But I think a lot of people like
The polar
they
opposite.
really see they're somewhere in the middle. They're not that polarized. And I think if we have more conversations about that, it kind of goes back to what we're talking about. We're talking about
The disconnect to nature and how, this is what I was thinking of earlier. If you can't sit with yourself in nature and just listen to the trees and the leaves and the birds and the singing of, because that's pure harmony. If you can't listen to that, you'll never be able to sit in a room with a group of different energetic beings and perceive them for what they truly are, not just your own projection and your own
yeah,
reflection of your own perception.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's just important to not get caught up in your own perspective, but just to
Mm.
understand that yeah, you do have a unique way of looking at the world, but so does everybody else. Like in that aspect you're not unique, and I think if you can see that as valuable, then you could embrace it. But if you see it like, oh, that's a threat to my own perspective, so now you have to go and conquer the minds of other people to believe and see the things, see the world what you see.
Instead of growing
Right, right.
from it.
So yeah, man, I think there's value in these different perspectives and different energies um, that we have.
Absolutely. Certainly, certainly. I really appreciate your message. I'm thankful for what you share. It definitely resonates with my lifestyle and just my vision and what I'm embodying
Where
here
you
on Earth.
located?
Um, yeah, I'm in
Okay.
West Texas. Yeah, I work on a regenerative uh, organic chicken farm, and I also work for a company called Nose to Tail, and we ship out all regenerative, humanely raised. It's a local Texas farm here in
Mm.
Texas as well. So those interrelated passions and uh, purpose has just connected me to yours as well. So I
Thank
really
you,
like
brother.
what you're doing,
Appreciate
man,
it.
for sure. Yeah,
All right, bro. Well, thank you for coming on, man. It was
yeah,
good
man.
talking to you.
It really was.
All right,
Peace,
brother.
power, prosperity. Y'all have a great day.
How do I? Okay. Yeah, man. That was good. Yeah. Yeah. Is there? Do you guys believe in the absolute truths, or do you think that we want to cling on to this idea of absolute truth because the the alternative would be the alternative is unknown and uncomfortable. Yeah, I mean, let me know your thoughts. I'm not. For a while, I was always like, oh no, there's obviously absolute truth. Like, not everything is relative. Not everything is um, subjective. Like, there has to be some absolute truth. But maybe that only absolute truth is that nothing is absolute. Yeah, because even some people say like, what is what is nature? You said nature is the truth. No, well, what is nature? Is everything nature? Is um is a city just nature, alchemized in a certain way and positioned in a certain manner? Are humans nature? Is outer space nature? Is the sun nature? Are the planets nature? Are the binary stars rotating millions of light years away nature? Is the galaxy nature? Is existence nature? You know, because to me, every that is nature. I do think about the galaxies and the planets and the stars and all celestial bodies as nature. And well, what is naturally occurring by whose standards? If humans made it and humans are nature, is that not nature creating with nature? So you see what I'm saying? Like the definition, or you have to be clear about what you mean when you say these words, because they can be manipulated in such a way to either empower you or disempower you. Because some people will sit in the middle of a city eating some processed food, holding a under a 5G tower, and basically glorifying civilization and saying this is nature, this is what we've come to. And maybe it is. I'm open to it, but you know, and a lot of people think that way. A lot of people think, and that's why like people like Elon Musk with this whole AI integration, they think that this is what nature is supposed to do. So they see it as the next logical step for consciousness to go into digital devices, for AI technology to take over, and for this integration to happen. Because and that's why they want to colonize other planets, because they see that is the next logical step, because they think that we've came here for a reason. This is what nature wanted to do, because if nature's a human are nature, and if humans are doing this, then it's kind of like nature's doing it. And that's one perspective. you know I think I think for me it's more about alignment within the self and the harmony within the self. And if we aren't experiencing that, maybe we do want to experience that, what can we do to find alignment with that, as opposed to ignoring that and thinking that progress is only further and further deviation from what has always existed. Like we have to keep, like that's the progressive mindset. Like we have to keep going and creating new things. We shouldn't do anything that we've ever done before. Or and that's what's weird to me, that a lot of traditional people, a lot of people that like identify as indigenous or that come from indigenous cultures or indigenous lineages are very progressive, when to me indigenous and traditional cultures should be like the most conservative thing, because you're trying to literally conserve a way of being that is very ancient. So it's interesting to me, because I often see a lot of kind of people that come from that going the other way with a lot of the ideology, or they identify maybe politically as more progressive, but what you're trying to do is conserve. You're trying to conserve a way of being, and at the highest level, you want to conserve a culture, a way of being, a people, a language, whatever, you know, you're wanting to conserve, but that's conservation, and that's the other side of the spectrum. So I don't know. It's just it's just interesting to me. Um, all right. I think I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't want to be on here too long because I want to save this and I want people to watch it. And because people have short attention spans, if the video is too long, there's no way that they're ever going to be able to sit through it. So in order for me to cater to the short attention span of humanity at this moment in time, I'm going to cease this live and go about my day. But hey, man, thanks everybody for coming in here. Really appreciate it. I'm really grateful for the support, for the community, for the connection. And I'm glad that we can come and find some sort of understanding, some sort of growth, some sort of development, just from an idea, from a conversation, you know, and that you guys are open to hearing what the hell I have to say, because I'm just another part of humanity, another part of the earth, another part of nature, just with my own perspective. So if it could bring value to your life, then I'm grateful for that. We should be levitating right now. I'm about to levitate up out of here, but see y'all later. Have a beautiful day. Peace.